I'm Matt, again, solutions engineer with Media Valet here. So I work a lot with our prospective customers as well as our current customers. And a big part of the role is figuring out how we can best implement DAM, not only for the creative and marketing teams, but how it can affect the larger organization as a whole there and really drive that impact across the board and how we can actually measure that impact as well. It's not only justify a DAM, but also its use and adoption across different teams and users here. So that's what we're going to be really diving in today about the ROI deep dive here and how to actually calculate and maximize the use of DAM for your team. So to start it off, we actually have a quick poll here that we can actually go through just to get a good sense of what we're currently working with in our day-to-day work with DAM. So the question that we're posing here is, which of the following are you currently using to measure DAM success? So time savings, for example. How much time are we saving on our daily workflows with the DAM compared to without one? I know some of the biggest time savings I've seen with customers is that DAM allows for a controlled self-service environment for the wider organization, which drastically cuts down the amount of requests that we can get on a day-to-day. Cost savings. How much money are we saving with asset reuse and repurposing? Now that we can effectively organize and find assets, content performance, basically, what are the usage metrics? How are you using the DAM to track how users are using the assets? Do we have any top performing assets that we see on a regular basis that we gravitate towards? Or you could just not be measuring success right now, but that's totally okay. Honestly, this is what today's session is for. I'm just gonna give it a second here and see what we can have with the results. Okay, perfect. So 33% of our attendees here are saving that time savings as their go-to here for measuring success. We're seeing that 11% are seeing it as cost savings, 33%. So another tie for first place here on content performance and usage metrics, which tend to be a big one. And 22% are not currently measuring success. So that's totally okay. So perfect. Let's go on now and see actually how we can start measuring success if we're not already, or how we can better measure success in different ways here. So this isn't a why DAM session. You probably already have a DAM. This is about proving its value and using that proof to expand it. If you're trying to justify expansion, budget, or deeper adoption, or just understand how your work is impacting overall business outcomes, this is what we're going to be covering today. The goal is simple. Take what your teams are already doing in your DAM every day and connect it to real measurable value here. So the gap between expectations and capacity is widening. So DAM's role is shifting because of this here. Most DAM teams feel this tension. The DAM is widely used, but maybe still not fully understood at the executive level. Your teams aren't necessarily lacking effort, they're just lacking the time. So expectations keep growing. Assets are needed in more formats, more channels, more deliverables. But the one thing that doesn't change is time. So you still have only 40 hours a week to accomplish all these things. Today, we're going to showcase how to prove the value of your DAM and how to justify expansion, whether that's features, additional storage, or widespread adoption across your organization. So this is a pretty cool slide here just to sum up the growth of content in the space. So this isn't just about more content, it's more complexity. So not only are teams creating record levels of content across multiple formats, they're expected to funnel it through an array of tools, stakeholders, and channels. Content volume is simply exploding. Brand assets are up 80%, video is up 83%, event footage is up 60%. But the real challenge isn't just the volume, it's coordinating these assets as well. So increasing creation output is a challenge in and of itself, but effectively organizing and distributing the assets is another challenge here altogether. This is what leads into the hidden ROI leak or the operational friction. So this is where ROI disappears, not in your DAM subscription cost, but in the workflow chaos that ensues here. Things like approval bottlenecks, manual handoffs, siloed systems, and duplicate work. These don't necessarily show up on a budget line, but they quietly drain time, money, and productivity from the team every day. Now, we all know that DAM delivers value every day, but it's buried in workflows, not surfaced in metrics. Here's the big challenge. The DAM value is real, but often it's invisible. So time savings, for example, are spread across different teams. Cost avoidance is also rarely tracked, and workflow gains aren't tied directly to revenue necessarily. So even though the value of DAM exists, it's not always visible to leadership, and that's how we're going to figure out how to actually quantify all of the ROI that we're saving with DAM here. So here we can see a cool chart on the evolution of DAM. So DAM has evolved significantly. It started towards the 2010s as a storage solution. Think your typical legacy cloud storage options to dump assets into. Towards the 2020s, COVID era here, it then became a collaboration tool with the rise of remote working. You can now configure shared or siloed environments and cloud environments for different teams and end users for a ton of different use cases. And now today, it's an enterprise infrastructure powering the entire content supply chain. So ROI isn't necessarily one number, it's three different levers, sorry. So time saved. Basecamp franchising is a good example here on the time saved. They saved 8 hours per campaign. How exactly did they do this? They actually enabled the users to instantly access on brand assets, download complete campaign kits from a single location, retrieve store specific creative with ease, and launch promotions independently using branded portals here. This has led to a drop in support calls and a full workday reduction in campaign creation, freeing the creative team to focus on higher value creative work. For the cost avoided section, we actually can take a look here at Monumental Sports Entertainment. They implemented both Media Valet and Reich, which is a project management tool, by automating tedious tasks and ensuring simplicity for users. They saved the team a lot of time and have significantly reduced administrative overhead and improved project turnaround times. Speed and output increased overall for their team. And lastly, let's look at UCSF here. So UCSF have a really cool use case where they attach related assets to patient consent forms. Not only does it ensure security and compliance, it sped up time it takes to identify, share, and distribute compliant assets for use across the university and within research. So of course, you can have DAM as a storage repository, but it's those connections of one asset to another and the metadata that links it all together that really creates the most value out of your day-to-day. Let's now look at your overall time saved. So some teams are reclaiming an entire work week, not by working harder, but by working smarter with DAM. Notice something here. These are workflow level savings, not feature level savings. DAM is enabling teams to work smarter and more efficiently. Teams report saving an average of 35 hours per week across workflows. That includes brand tasks, approvals, and video workflows. When you start stacking those hours across teams, that's where ROI becomes very real, very fast here. A quick way to calculate how to actually see how much time we're saving is by using this simple calculation here. So this gives you an example of why even small workflow improvements scale dramatically across teams. Here's a simple framework to calculate time saving. So we can start with a activity like asset search, for example. From there, we'll estimate the time saved per person. We can multiply that then by the overall team size and then apply an hourly cost. In this example, that results in over $100,000 annually in recovered time. And the key takeaway is that ROI doesn't require complex models, it just requires consistency. What is DAM enabling us to do on a day-to-day basis? That's a lot easier than what we're doing before and a lot quicker than what we're doing before. This now leads into cost avoidance. So this is the ROI that most teams actually miss. It's a cost that you don't incur. Because we have a DAM set up and everything is running efficiently, we hopefully never have to run into these problems again. So this includes things like duplicate shoots, redundant storage, tools, agency costs, compliance risks, licensing fees, and penalties. I was actually working with an organization a few months back who came to Media Valet because they had a pretty costly experience in asset mismanagement. They used a photo on their site that was still up past its licensing window, which caused a bit of a legal battle. And we're now looking at Media Valet to ensure automated asset expiry for web and external CMS use cases so this wouldn't happen again. So examples like this are just examples of costs that you don't incur because your DAM is working properly here. So when assets are centralized and reusable, you stop paying for the same content twice. To put numbers behind that, to duplicate photo shoot alone can cost five to $20,000. And organizations are seeing six-figure savings annually just by consolidating tools and workflows. This is often one of the fastest way to justify investment here. Oh, might change here. Then there's speed and output. So stats from the 2026 DAM Trends Report. This is a percentage of DAM users that have saved time on these initiatives. Collaboration improves by 61%, campaign launches by 70%, and video reuse by 88%. This is where DAM starts shifting from an efficiency tool to a growth enabler for the overall team. So, with DAM as the central component, efficiency gains scale when workflows are centralized. When you break that down operationally, brand management, approvals, and video workflows all see measurable weekly time savings. And these are repeatable, trackable gains. So, for example, brand management can save 11 hours weekly. Approval cycles are 15-hour weekly, and video management 40 hours weekly, which is a ton of time back to your team. So you can really focus on the creative works and what matters most with the role here. This is now where you can bring it all together, and we can use an ROI calculator for this. So Media Valet, we actually conveniently provide you one on our website that any of you can go access just to see how it impacts your team specifically with DAM. So just run through an example here. I'm going to shift over to this screen, and this is the URL that we have displayed on the site here on the presentation. And for this, we can start plugging away based on our organization specifically. So how many employees are on our team currently? Let's just say 10 for now, and let's just use a annual wage of 70,000 here. Now we can start plugging in some metrics specific to our use cases here. So how many hours per week does our team spend looking for assets? Let's just use 12 as the example here, but of course you can slide this if it's any less or any more. Creative agencies, for example, we tend to find that they spend a lot more time than your average marketing team. This is their day-to-day for the operation of the business, so they might spend a little more time doing this. Or if you have a smaller team, you could spend less here. Manual distribution. How many hours does your team labor over distributing content across multiple channels? So this is a big part of the DAM use case. DAM not only gives you a way to distribute content externally, but allows you to actually ingest different users across your organization for them to self-serve, which cuts down things like asset requests. So you no longer have people pinging you all day for things that they should already have here. So depending on how large your organization is or the requests that you deal with, again, this can be a little more or a little less on this slider here, but we'll keep it to around 10 hours for this here. How many hours per week do you spend recreating or reformatting existing assets? Now, depending again on the work you do and the channels that you work with, this could be things for digital, for CMS, for print. Take account all the outlets that you may reuse an asset for. With Media Valet, we have built-in tools to transform and crop assets within the platform for CMS use cases. Our CDN links can also transform dynamically for different sizes and web formats. So this is another great use case just to see what you are doing now and maybe what you project. We're also in that age of marketing teams expanding and really pushing out a lot more content than we used to. So you might want to see what we're spending now for hours and what you can project and what you might be spending on the future here. How many hours per week do you spend downloading and re-uploading assets across systems? So this is another cool thing when it comes to centralizing your DAM into your ecosystem. So with Media Valet, we can integrate into a ton of different other platforms. Gone are the days where you actually have to download from one area and upload into another area just to get the asset in a different software or in a different template, for example. Here, we can actually now integrate and keep Media Valet as a single source of truth. So this is very common in heavy video creative workflows, for example, here, where you might have something on a SSD or your hard drive, and you need to download that on your drive and upload that into the cloud after your work is done and keep that process going back and forth if you're just changing between different creatives or different team members here. So having a centralized repository that all users can access the same content will really cut down your uploading and downloading across different systems here. So again, take a little tally of your personal workflow, and maybe if you have any heavy creative users, this might be a little higher. If you're on the lighter side, again, you can keep it lighter here. Existing software. How much are you spending annually on your existing asset management solution? So a big part of savings is consolidation. Media Valet as a DAM can often do the work of five or six different softwares combined. So you think traditionally of your typical cloud storage drive, for example, Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive. So we can now eliminate maybe a storage repository if need be. How much are you spending on that? And let's factor it into this cost here. Other features with the system include things like file sharing and proofing and approval workflows. So Media Valley also has features and workflows for that built in. So if you are having to spend the extra money on a software dedicated just for that one specific task, you can see how much it would be to offset that into Media Valley now and consolidate it again into one platform for not only just your assets, but all the workflows on a day-to-day. Now we can even include brand management software, rights management software here as a zero. But for these fields, honestly, you can think of any other software you think we can eliminate with the inclusion of Media Valet or a DAM system here. Once you've toggled all of your settings in here and have all your sliders in place, you'll see on the right-hand side both the time saved and the total cost that you're saving by implementing Media Valet here. So this is a good way to look at the ROI with DAM at a very high level that I really encourage you to play around with. And if you have any questions on it, please let our team know here. So getting back into the slides now. ROI alone doesn't secure the overall funding. What does is strategic alignment and how we can position this to our greater team and stakeholders involved in the process. These aren't going to be the people working in the DAM on a day to day. That's us here. We know exactly how much time this is saving us in our creative workflows, but maybe organizations that have leadership not so much in the DAM space or using the DAM on a day to day, maybe a little disconnected. So this is how we can effectively communicate that across different teams and incur wider adoption here. So here's some positioning and stakeholder alignment that we can use. There are different ways to approach DAM as an ROI for each different stakeholder that holds the purse strings essentially. For CMOs, for example, how does it impact brand consistency, time to market, and workflows? How does the use of a DAM make it easier for our overall marketing team to work on a day-to-day and get push content out quicker and more efficiently? For the CFO, how is the DAM impacting the business financially? How much are we saving for the team by implementing a DAM? The easiest way to think about this is consolidating resources, for example, and how is it enabling our team to work at a higher output? For the CIO, does it meet security requirements? And has it positively impact compliance? You can think things like watermarking, audit trails, permission controls, essentially dictating who in the organization sees what. With DAM, you not only get a way to organize all your content and democratize the content across your different users, but there's also a very robust reporting analytics section in the back end. So if you are working with content that might be particularly sensitive, for example, this is a great way to make sure that audit logs are kept in place, where you have full asset history and version control and usage metrics across different users and departments. Now, for legal teams, how is the DAM better protecting our team? You can think of rights management, attaching model release forms to assets, and automating expiry dates based on licensing. So these are on the legal side can be very costly ways if we don't solve it ahead of time. So I've seen this happen a few times with different prospects looking into Media Valet and a dam because of legal issues with mismanaging rights and release forms and not having assets properly contained when they need to be contained here. So DAM offers the same ROI across the team, but to different stakeholders, you just need to speak different languages here. So what are we looking at with DAM now? It's no longer a marketing tool, but it has become a shared infrastructure that benefits the organization in several ways. When positioned correctly, DAM becomes the operating engine for your content lifecycle. It sits at the center of your marketing and creative tech stack, which then funnels into all of your other tools and workflows across the organization. From planning and creation to review and distribution, everything flows through a single source of truth. This is where Media Valet really differentiates, connecting every stage of the content journey across different teams and tech ecosystems here. So AI is the next layer of ROI and tends to be the hot topic across anything tech related these days. So AI is not replacing creativity. It's just removing friction. So things like auto tagging, AI transcription, natural language search, and automated routing. This is how you can leverage AI to remove the redundant tasks of a creative's day to day and really empower your team to focus on what matters most, which is being creative and not having to deal with the administrative or mundane workflows that you can now automate with AI here. The future of your dam expands, or the further your dam expands, the better your ROI becomes. So you can start with centralization first. That tends to be the key catalyst in adopting media valet in a dam in general. Things are scattered and we need them in one place. It then moves on to workflow integration. So how can we incorporate Media Valet as a repository into different aspects of the business and the different tools that we use? Think things like Adobe Creative Platforms or project management tools where we can now pull assets from Media Valet in that central repository there. Phase three is automation and AI. Now that we have our centralized source of truth integrated with different platforms, how can we automate those mundane tasks? How do we make it more efficient for our team to work on a day-to-day basis? And phase four is going to be enterprise activation. This is how we can now adopt the DAM org wide, enable and empower different users to effectively use DAM to support their day-to-day workflows. Each phase compounds the value of the previous. So at each time you get to master the centralization component or the workflow integration, it'll then compound into your overall ecosystem here with DAM. So let's look at how the DAM ROI expands over time. So the deeper DAM integrates into workflows, the larger the ROI becomes. DAM ROI doesn't happen all at once. It grows as the platform becomes more integrated into the way teams work. So we've captured phase one, ROI, and funding phase two unlocks the next level. So phase one, centralization. Initially, ROI comes from simple efficiency. Teams find assets faster and stop recreating work. Phase two, workflow integration. So once DAM connects to approvals and project management, workflows accelerate and campaigns move faster. Phase three now with automation. Automation and AI remove manual steps like tagging, routing, and version management. And lastly, phase four with enterprise activation. The DAM finally becomes infrastructure used by marketing, sales, partners, and global teams. So if you want to expand your DAM investment, measure your current ROI. Identify the bottlenecks in your current ecosystem. What pain point are we solving with DAM? Estimate additional value. If we can effectively eliminate all pains, we can then make the case for expansion. This turns DAM into a single strategic investment and not just a tool for day-to-day use. So that rounds out my slides for today. Thank you everyone for listening. Um, any questions that we have so far here? Okay, perfect. Got a question here from Jason. What's the biggest mistake organizations make when trying to justify further investment in DAM? Yeah, I think the one of the biggest mistakes organizations can make is tackling all problems all at once. Might be the larger thing that we want to scale down a little bit. Not because it's not viable, but because it can be overwhelming at times. If we can figure out ways to adjust the dam and slowly adopt different users, I think that's the best way to effectively grow and scale your dam. For example, marketing can be the ones who first initiate DAM with the organization itself. Marketing plays closely with sales in almost every organization. So the next step could be to then adopt some of the sales team within the DAM, generate those new users, create a sales workspace for them. So marketing can efficiently scale with the sales team, and then from there move into partnerships, so on and so forth here. So you want to think about the ways that you are currently distributing content, maybe internally, and then moving on with adoption and segmented steps there. From Amy here. Teams that don't have strong reporting in place yet, what should they start? Where should they start when building an ROI story? So if you don't have reporting in place yet, not to worry. You can start with what assets are you sending out most. So for marketing, for example, you can think of distribution first and foremost. So I'm going to use the sales example again, but sales collateral. Which sales collateral are we creating that the sales team are using the most on the day to day? Which ones are they pulling from? You can actually track all of that within Media Valley itself. If you go to the reportings tab, you can see your top performing assets in terms of who has used these assets the most, who has downloaded and viewed these assets the most. So you can see which content you're creating specifically is being used the most and what you can maybe create derivatives of. So maybe they like this piece on ROI that we created. Maybe we should make some more pieces on ROI. Maybe they didn't like some other pieces or collateral that we created, and it lets us know that it's not doing particularly well. We can gravitate away from that. So that's a one way to start. There's no, doesn't look like there's any other questions here. So we're gonna settle on this for now. But if any other questions do come up, feel free, of course, to let our team know. We'll be happy to help you with any ROI specific questions along the way here. And with that, I will close it and pass it back to Ian.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Really interesting session there on ROI. I hope it was beneficial to the audience. Again, we have a full day again ahead of us tomorrow, kicking off at 9:30 a.m. Pacific with John Horoditsky on the Damn AI Gap. So, thanks again, Matt, for doing that session with us today, and we hope to see some of you tomorrow. All right, thank you, folks.
Bye, Matt.